Commander Elias Kane stood on the observation deck of the human starship Resolute. Watching the Tervani capital spread below like a jewel in the void of space, towers of silver and crystal reached toward the stars, their surfaces reflecting the alien sun in dazzling patterns. Ships of all sizes glided silently between the buildings, moving as if guided by invisible strings. The Tervani were a proud and ancient race, and humans, though bold enough to arrive at their court, were still newcomers in this galaxy of wonders. Kane adjusted his ceremonial armor, the polished metal plates gleaming under the ship's lights. The armor was impressive by human standards, functional, protective, and designed to give a commanding presence. Yet compared to Tervani designs he had seen in holographic records, it was cumbersome. He reminded himself it was meant for appearances, not battle. The Tervani valued style, precision, and elegance. Humans valued practicality. And today, he would represent that practicality. "Are you ready, Commander?" Lieutenant Mara Chen asked, standing beside him. Her eyes were wide with nervous excitement. She had been part of the human delegation for years. Yet even she felt the weight of walking into an alien court that could decide the fate of humanity's future in the Galactic Council. "I'm always ready," Kane said, voice calm. But inside, a small tension coiled in his chest. First impressions mattered. The Tervani first impressions could be ruthless. The human delegation descended to the landing platform and the ceremonial transport, a sleek vehicle that hummed softly as it docked at the Grand Palace. The airlock opened, and a wave of the Tervani atmosphere greeted them. It smelled faintly metallic, tinged with ozone, and carried the subtle scent of strange flowering plants that grew along the palace terraces. A group of Tervani courtiers awaited them, tall and slender, with pale, almost translucent skin and eyes that gleamed like liquid silver. Their movements were precise, almost choreographed, and every gesture carried a meaning that Kane could only guess at. At the center of the group stood the one Kane had been warned about, Princess Lysera. She was elegant, terrifyingly confident, and her reputation for intelligence matched her sharp tongue. Her robes shimmered like liquid metal, catching the light in a way that made every motion a statement of power. Kane took a careful step forward. "I am Commander Elias Kane," he said. "We come in peace, on behalf of humanity." Lysera tilted her head, her silver eyes scanning him with amusement. "Ah, the humans," she said, her voice smooth, musical, but edged with mockery. "I have seen your people in records. So, primitive." Kane's jaw tightened slightly, but he held his composure. "We may seem simple," he said evenly, "but simplicity often hides strength." The princess's laughter was soft, almost playful, but Kane felt it like a blade. "Your armor, for example," she said, pointing at him with a slender finger, is, how do you say it? Clunky, heavy, ridiculous? Surely you do not wear this in battle? Kane's mind worked quickly. She was testing him, as she tested all newcomers. A human might have reacted with anger. A Tervani would have likely laughed and walked away. Kane did neither. He simply nodded, as though agreeing, and allowed the statement to hang in the air. "Yes," he said softly. "It is not elegant, but it serves its purpose." Lysera's lips curved into a smile, though her eyes sparkled with something sharper. Challenge. Purpose? How quaint. I suppose humans value function over beauty. How? Charming. The human delegation tensed. Kane sensed Mara's hand brush against his arm, a silent reminder of the weight of decorum. But Kane remained still, like a tree in the wind, rooted and unshaken. The princess motioned for them to follow her. The human delegation trailed behind, passing under arches carved with symbols that glowed faintly with Tervani energy. The palace was alive with subtle movement. Walls and floors shifted as if the building itself were aware of their presence. Kane noted every detail, the placement of guards, the flow of traffic, the patterns of attention among the Tervani courtiers. "Your people are noisy," Lysera said, walking ahead in her effortless grace. Even in movement, you lack subtlety. But tell me, Commander, how do you survive with such bluntness? Kane did not answer immediately. Instead, he observed the princess, noting the elegance of her gestures, the careful precision in the way she walked, and the almost imperceptible tension in her posture when she moved among her own people. She was perfect on the surface, but even perfection had cracks. He allowed himself a small, polite smile. "We survive," he said finally, "because we adapt. And we learn quickly." Lysera paused, turning to face him fully. Her gaze was sharp, studying as if trying to measure the depth of his words. "Adapt, yes?" she said. "And yet here you are, clad in this cumbersome armor, obeying rules that make no sense to you. You play the game of appearances, like all newcomers. But tell me, does humanity always need armor to hide its weakness?" The remark stung, not because it was false, but because she spoke it with such certainty that humans were weak. Kane met her gaze evenly. "Armor does not hide weakness," he said. "It protects against it. And strength can come from many forms, not all of them obvious." Lysera's silver eyes flickered, a faint surprise showing before she masked it with amusement. Bold words. Brave words for a human. "Perhaps you are not entirely like the others. Perhaps—" The entourage entered a large hall where the court would hold its formal meeting. Towers of crystal reflected light across the marble floor. Alien dignitaries gathered in clusters, whispering in a language Kane could not understand, their attention flicking occasionally toward the humans. Kane could feel the weight of their scrutiny, 1,000 eyes judging, calculating, measuring the humans. Lysera took her place on a raised platform, gesturing for the human delegation to stand in the center. Kane stepped forward, chest straight, shoulders squared. The ceremonial armor gleamed, each piece clinking softly with every move. He noticed the whispers around him, but he ignored them. Focusing on the moment, "Commander Kane," Lysera said, her voice carrying effortlessly across the hall. "Humans are said to be clever, resourceful, and entertaining. Let us see if that is true. Show me, then, the nature of your strength." Kane inclined his head. He did not speak immediately, because strength was not always shown in words. He allowed the silence to settle, letting his presence, his calm confidence, speak for him. The princess raised an eyebrow, curious. Humans were slow to react, or at least, they seemed so at first glance. He then stepped forward with controlled grace. He did not remove his armor. He did not shout or boast. He simply walked, letting the clinks of metal punctuate his steps in the quiet hall. Every movement was precise, deliberate, measured. The audience could see that each step, each gesture, was purposeful. Lysera's amusement did not falter, but Kane sensed a subtle shift in the air. The Tervani noticed the difference between humans who rushed to prove themselves and humans who did not need to prove themselves at all. After several minutes, Kane stopped, turned slightly, and bowed, a simple gesture of respect that carried no weakness, no fear. The hall remained silent. Even the princess did not speak. Then she smiled, a small, knowing smile. "Interesting," she said. "Perhaps you are not as clumsy as your armor suggests." Kane allowed a faint smile, just enough to acknowledge her words without drawing attention to himself. He had no need to argue. The armor was irrelevant. Its clumsy design, the princess's mockery, all of it mattered little. Strength, he knew, would show itself when it was needed, quietly, without fanfare. The court meeting continued, but Kane's presence had made an impression. The Tervani murmured, whispered, and speculated. The princess, for the first time, considered that humans might be more than they appeared. As the meeting ended, Kane returned to the observation terrace, the hum of the palace around him. Mara joined him, eyes wide with excitement and relief. "You handled that?" "Brilliantly," she said, almost breathless. "I thought she would humiliate you completely." Kane shrugged, adjusting his armor. "I did what was necessary. Strength doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just exists." The stars stretched endlessly before them, and Kane could feel the weight of the future pressing down. Humans were still newcomers, still underestimated. But one thing was certain. Today, In the Tervani court, they had made an impression, and for Elias Kane, that was just the beginning. The grand hall of the Tervani palace buzzed with quiet energy. Alien courtiers moved with perfect precision, their silver eyes flicking constantly between the humans and one another, calculating, judging. Commander Elias Kane walked among them with calm confidence, the polished plates of his armor catching the soft glow of the crystal walls. Every step he took was measured, yet purposeful, as though he belonged in the palace. Even if every Tervani in the room believed otherwise, Princess Lysera watched him from her elevated platform. Leaning slightly forward, her hands folded in the elegant, flowing gesture of her people. The corners of her mouth tilted upward in faint amusement. "Humans are strange creatures," she murmured to a nearby aide. "So proud, yet so transparent. Let us see if this one proves interesting." The first demonstration of skill was subtle, but telling. The Tervani invited humans and their delegates to participate in a holographic strategy exercise. A series of floating images appeared above a central table, showing star systems, fleets, and supply routes. The task was to predict enemy movements and propose a defense. It was simple to the Tervani, whose culture had been built on centuries of perfected tactics. For humans, it was new, complex, and challenging. Kane stepped forward, studying the holographic map with careful eyes. He traced potential fleet movements with his fingers, calculating supply lines and noting patterns in enemy behavior. The aliens watching expected him to hesitate, to fumble. He did neither. He spoke clearly, presenting strategies that were both unconventional and effective. He suggested counter-movements that no Tervani had thought to use, subtle. Adaptive tactics based on logic rather than tradition. Lysera's eyebrows rose, a flicker of surprise crossing her otherwise calm face. Her silver eyes narrowed slightly, studying him more closely. "Interesting," she said softly. "The human relies on unpredictability rather than elegance." Curious. Next came a physical demonstration. The Tervani's palace contained a training area where gravity could be adjusted to test agility, balance, and endurance. Kane entered the chamber with quiet determination. The Tervani moved with graceful ease in the shifting gravity, seeming almost untouchable. Humans, by contrast, were heavier, their movements awkward at first glance. Yet Kane did not falter. He adjusted to each change in gravity with precise calculations. His body moving fluidly despite the cumbersome armor, he leapt, ducked, and ran with control, anticipating the environment and adapting instantly. The Tervani observers whispered among themselves. They were impressed, and perhaps slightly unnerved. Princess Lysera's gaze followed him, sharp and calculating. She tested him directly, sending an energy obstacle that forced sudden reactions. Kane did not stumble. Instead, he analyzed, anticipated, and responded, completing the obstacle with efficiency and grace. No fanfare, no celebration, just results. The princess's lips curved in a small, almost grudging smile. "A human with poise," she murmured. "Perhaps they are not as primitive as I assumed." The day continued with a series of challenges, each designed to measure skill, intelligence, and adaptability. The humans, under Kane's quiet leadership, performed admirably. Some challenges were diplomatic, convincing alien delegates to consider proposals or alliances. Others were practical, managing resources or navigating alien technology. And in each case, Kane's calm demeanor and careful thinking allowed the humans to succeed where others might have failed. During one exercise, a Tervani counselor attempted to deceive the humans by presenting false information. Many would have fallen for the ruse immediately. Kane, however, had been observing for patterns, noticing subtle inconsistencies in the counselor's presentation. He corrected the mistake gracefully, explaining a better strategy without embarrassing the counselor. Whispers spread among the aliens. Humans were observant, clever, and patient. Between exercises, Kane moved quietly among his people, offering advice, reassurance, and guidance. He encouraged his delegation to trust their instincts and think independently. The humans had been trained to rely on each other and themselves, but in this alien environment, independence was crucial. Kane knew that confidence, when balanced with humility, was more effective than arrogance or desperation. By midday, whispers about the human commander began to spread. Even minor delegates, who had been skeptical at first, now watched Kane with curiosity and a hint of respect. He did not demand attention. It was given to him naturally, because his presence carried competence, patience, and quiet strength. Lysera, ever perceptive, noticed the change. She could feel the stirrings of admiration in the alien courtiers around her. Her amusement shifted into something more complex, intrigue, perhaps, or even envy. She leaned back on her platform, considering the humans carefully. "They are unusual," she admitted, almost to herself. "They do not follow our rules, yet they excel. Clever, subtle, dangerous in a quiet way." The humans were given one final test for the day, a simulated negotiation with alien diplomats. The scenario was designed to test composure, logic, and diplomacy. Kane approached the table, his calm eyes meeting each Tervani participant. The humans spoke clearly, logically presenting arguments, anticipating objections, and responding without hesitation or emotional flair. The aliens attempted every trick they knew, exaggeration, threats, subtle manipulation. But Kane's quiet leadership ensured that the humans remained unflustered. Their logic was sound, their reasoning precise, and though they did not boast, their confidence was evident. The negotiation concluded with a surprising outcome. Not only did the humans avoid pitfalls, they also earned tentative agreements that the Tervani themselves had doubted possible. Murmurs ran through the hall. Kane had shown that humans could hold their own in a culture far older, more advanced, and more complex than their own. Princess Lysera, observing all of this, felt a mix of emotions. She had expected arrogance, mistakes, and visible weakness. Instead, she saw quiet confidence, ingenuity, and adaptability. She realized that the humans did not need to prove themselves with flashy displays or loud words. They let their abilities speak for them. As the humans left the court for the day, Kane noticed the subtle looks exchanged among the Tervani delegates. Some carried respect, others disbelief. Lysera herself did not speak to him yet, but her eyes lingered longer than before. She was calculating, revising her assumptions. Back in the palace gardens, Kane walked slowly among alien flora, his mind already planning for the days ahead. Mara joined him, her expression a mix of relief and admiration. "They underestimated us," she said softly. "You made them rethink everything about humans." Kane nodded, adjusting the edges of his armor. "They will continue to underestimate us," he said. "It is their nature. But patience, observation, and quiet action often reveal more than loud words or flashy displays." Mara smiled. "Do you think Princess Lysera will respect us?" Kane's silver-gray eyes followed the shimmer of the alien plants. "Respect is earned quietly," he said. "Today was only the first step. The armor they mocked does not define us. Our actions, our choices, and our calm in the face of their tests that defines us." The gardens stretched endlessly, filled with glowing plants and alien birds that moved in strange patterns. Kane breathed deeply, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the thrill of potential. Humanity had survived its first full day under the watchful eyes of the Tervani. They had not bowed, they had not faltered, and for the first time, he sensed that the princess's amusement had shifted, perhaps, just slightly into curiosity. That night, as the humans returned to their quarters aboard the palace transport, Kane reflected on the day. He understood the subtle lessons of Tervani culture. Appearances were everything. Elegance was power, and silence often carried more weight than words. He had survived not by proving dominance, but by demonstrating calm competence. And in that, Kane felt the familiar spark of human pride. Not arrogance, not boastfulness, but quiet. Unyielding confidence in the face of doubt. Across the palace, Princess Lysera lay in her chamber, her mind unable to rest. She replayed the day's events, each observation of Kane and his people etched in her memory. "Humans are strange," she whispered to herself. "Not as weak as I thought. Perhaps. Stronger than I ever imagined." The galaxy around them was vast, full of wonders, dangers, and civilizations older than humanity could count. But in that moment, the Tervani princess began to understand something fundamental. Humans were unpredictable, resourceful, and quietly formidable. They were different from anything she had known, and that difference was precisely what made them dangerous and admirable, all at once. Tomorrow, Kane knew, would bring new tests. The Tervani were clever, and they would not allow humans to pass without further challenge. But he also knew that humans had something few others possessed: adaptability, patience, and the courage to act when the moment demanded it. And sometimes, strength revealed itself most powerfully, not in flash or fire, but in quiet, unshakable confidence. The stars shone through the palace windows, distant and cold, yet familiar. Kane closed his eyes for a moment, letting the calm of space fill him. Humanity had survived its first encounter with the Tervani court, and that, he knew, was only the beginning. The next day, the Tervani court waited with keen anticipation. Whispers traveled quickly through the hall. The humans had surprised the delegates yesterday. Commander Elias Kane walked into the chamber with quiet confidence, his armor polished, his expression calm. Princess Lysera's silver eyes followed him from her elevated platform, a faint smile still lingering on her lips. She had expected arrogance or clumsiness. Instead, she had seen patience, intelligence, and controlled strength. The day began with tests of endurance. The Tervani had a chamber where gravity, wind, and temperature could be altered at will, creating extreme conditions for anyone inside. Kane entered with a composed posture. Mara, following close behind, adjusted her stance nervously, feeling the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. Humans were about to face their most challenging trial yet, not just physical, but psychological. The gravity shifted suddenly, increasing by half. Kane adjusted instantly, planting his feet with careful precision. He moved slowly but surely, calculating the new weight on each limb. The Tervani around him moved with elegance, seemingly unbothered. But Kane noticed minor inefficiencies, slight pauses, a touch of imbalance. Unlike the Tervani, humans were slower to adapt at first glance. But Kane used his careful observation to turn perceived weaknesses into strength. Wind gusted violently, tearing at their armor and robes. Kane crouched low, maintaining balance while keeping his eyes on the chamber's obstacles. He noticed that Tervani relied heavily on muscle memory, their movements practiced and flawless. Humans, by contrast, observed, adapted, and improvised. Kane shifted, using his weight and the environment in a way that minimized strain. Lysera's amusement flickered, placed by curiosity. "Interesting," she murmured to herself. "The human does not falter under conditions meant to test skill. They adapt in ways we did not anticipate." Next came a challenge of intelligence. The Tervani presented a holographic simulation of a colony in crisis. Resources were limited, natural disasters threatened, and political factions were on the brink of rebellion. Kane stepped forward, analyzing the variables. He noticed patterns in the simulation that mirrored strategies humans had used on Earth for centuries: planning, resource allocation, and diplomacy. Kane spoke calmly, outlining steps to stabilize the colony, redistribute resources, and mediate conflicts. The Tervani delegates watched, silent and skeptical at first. Yet as he explained, his reasoning proved logical, practical, and innovative. One by one, the aliens began nodding in approval. Kane did not boast, did not demand recognition. He simply presented results. Lysera's eyes narrowed. She had expected the humans to struggle under pressure, to falter, to reveal weakness. Instead, they were calm, competent, and measured. The spark of admiration, subtle but unmistakable, began to grow by midday. Kane had noticed subtle patterns among the Tervani guards and delegates. Their movements, their focus, even the rhythm of their conversations, all gave clues about their capabilities and intentions. He began to test quietly, placing small challenges that the Tervani did not anticipate. A distracted delegate was gently corrected, a poorly timed move in the simulation anticipated and neutralized. Kane was teaching without announcing it, fluencing without force. Then came the moment that would shift the perception of the humans entirely. The ceremonial armor Kane wore had drawn ridicule from Princess Lysera on the first day. Now, after observing the human delegation, the princess's curiosity was piqued. Kane could feel her gaze, calculating, waiting. He knew the time had come to demonstrate something beyond strategy or endurance, something that would speak louder than words or simulation. He stopped mid-chamber, and for a moment silence fell. The Tervani delegates leaned forward, anticipating another display of skill or intelligence. Kane slowly reached for the clasps of his ceremonial armor. There was no dramatic gesture, no flourish, only calm, deliberate motion. Piece by piece, he removed the armor. The clinking of metal echoed softly through the hall, a subtle contrast to the murmurs rising from the Tervani audience. Beneath the ceremonial plates was not weakness, as the princess had assumed, but an advanced exosuit-like system, sleek, efficient, and built for performance, endurance, and adaptability. Unlike Tervani designs, which prioritized appearance and elegance, Kane's suit prioritized function and practicality. Every line, every panel, every joint was designed for maximum efficiency. The hall grew silent. Eyes widened. Whispers stopped mid-sentence. The princess herself leaned forward, her silver eyes sharp and calculating, now tinged with disbelief. The human she had mocked was in fact far more capable than she had imagined. Kane did not speak. He did not announce his strength. He simply straightened. The exosuit fitted perfectly under his natural form and walked forward. Every step was confident, precise, controlled. He was no longer a human clad in clunky ceremonial armor. He was a figure of subtle power, quiet authority, undeniable capability. The Tervani delegates began to murmur among themselves. A few whispered to one another, comparing notes, reassessing what they had thought about humans. Princess Lysera, silent for a moment, felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, humility. She had underestimated humans. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and, above all, quietly strong. Kane continued walking, making no grand gestures, drawing no attention to himself beyond the natural respect that came from presence. The exosuit enhanced his endurance, allowed precise control over movement, and provided protection without the bulk of traditional armor. It was human ingenuity in its purest form, practical, clever, and understated. Les Era finally broke the silence. "You, humans," she said softly, almost to herself, "you hide power where we least expect it." Kane paused briefly, not turning to look at her. "Strength is not always loud," he said evenly. "Sometimes it exists quietly, waiting for the moment it is needed." A ripple of understanding passed through the court. The Tervani realized that humans did not need elegance or showy displays to dominate. Their strength lay in adaptability, intelligence, and calm determination. Kane had not shouted, had not forced attention, yet every eye in the room now recognized the truth. The princess studied him, her previous amusement replaced by fascination and respect. She had expected a simple, clumsy human. Instead, she saw someone who could match her, perhaps surpass her, in ways that were not immediately obvious. She began to reassess everything she thought she knew about humanity. Kane turned and walked toward the central exit of the chamber. He made no proclamation, no boast. His walk alone, quiet, deliberate, confident, spoke volumes. Humans were not to be underestimated. Their strength was subtle, intelligent, and ever-present. As he left, the murmurs grew louder. Some delegates whispered about tactics, others about human potential, but all agreed on one thing: the humans and their quiet commander had revealed something far greater than anyone had anticipated. Outside the chamber, Mara caught up to him, eyes wide with awe. That was incredible," she whispered. "You didn't even say a word, and yet..." "Everything changed," Kane nodded. "It was never about words," he said. "It's about results, patience, and quiet confidence. People notice strength, even when it is understated." Mara looked back toward the palace, where Princess Lysera still observed from her platform. "Do you think she understands now?" Kane's gaze followed her, steady and calm. "She understands more than she knows," he said. "And tomorrow, she will understand even more." The exosuit beneath his ceremonial armor was more than technology. It was a symbol of human ingenuity, a testament to what humans could achieve when intelligence, patience, and creativity combined. The Tervani court had witnessed the beginning of something new, a lesson in underestimated power. And in the quiet confidence that defined humanity, as night fell over the Tervani capital, Kane reflected on the day. Humans had survived trials that were meant to humiliate and test them. They had demonstrated subtle power, intelligence, and resilience. And most importantly, they had revealed something the princess and her people had not expected. Humans were quietly formidable, capable of achieving greatness without arrogance or showiness. For Princess Lysera, sleep did not come easily. She had underestimated the humans, misjudged their strength, and now faced the uncomfortable truth. They were not just survivors. They were innovators, adapters, and quietly unstoppable. And she could not deny the spark of admiration that now accompanied her curiosity. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations older and wiser than humanity. But in that moment, one lesson became clear. Humans, with their adaptability, intelligence, and quiet strength, were not to be ignored. They could achieve greatness in ways no one had anticipated, and Commander Elias Kane was the living proof of that fact. The Tervani court was alive with a new energy the following morning. The whispers about Commander Elias Kane and the humans had spread quickly. Delegates who had once regarded humanity as a curiosity now watched with cautious respect. The princess herself, Princess Lysera, had spent the night replaying every moment of Kane's demonstration. His calm, confidence, intelligence, and quiet strength had left an impression that she could not ignore. Kane entered the grand hall once more. Subtle hum of his exosuit hidden beneath simple robes, meant to show respect for the court's traditions. His steps were measured, deliberate, and confident. Every eye in the room followed him, some with curiosity, some with suspicion, and some, surprisingly, with admiration. Lysera stood on her platform, her silver eyes scanning him carefully. She had spent the last 24 hours reevaluating everything she thought she knew about humans. She had mocked their armor, assumed their weakness, and expected them to falter under pressure. But she had been wrong. And now, she wanted to understand the nature of their strength. "Commander Kane," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. "Humans have survived challenges we thought insurmountable. You have shown skill, intelligence, and resilience. I confess, I underestimated your people." Kane inclined his head respectfully. "Princess Lysera, humanity is still learning. But we also learn quickly, and we adapt." Lysera studied him, intrigued by his humility and confidence. "Adaptability is admirable. But tell me, Commander, what drives your people? What makes humans capable of so much when others falter?" Kane considered his words carefully. "We face challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities. We are not the strongest in terms of power, nor the oldest in wisdom. But we survive and thrive because we do not fear to act, to think, and to improve. Our strength is in our intelligence, our courage, and our persistence." The princess tilted her head, considering him. She had spent centuries surrounded by civilizations that valued elegance, power, and strict adherence to tradition. Humans were different. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and quietly formidable. Lysera felt a mixture of admiration and humility. The council had prepared one final test, not of strength or intelligence, but of diplomacy. Kane and his delegation were to negotiate an alliance with several minor Tervani factions. The factions had differing interests and subtle conflicts among them. The challenge was designed to confuse and divide, to test the humans' ability to unify and reason under pressure, Kane approached the task calmly. He listened first, observing every detail, the gestures, the subtle inflections in speech, the relationships between the factions. Then he spoke. Not loudly, not forcefully, but with logic, clarity, and empathy. He identified common goals, proposed solutions that satisfied multiple parties, and demonstrated the human capacity for compromise without weakness. The factions listened, surprised by the coherence of his reasoning. Where they expected confusion, they found clarity. Where they expected manipulation, they found fairness. And slowly, one by one, they began to agree. The alliance formed not because humans demanded it, but because they understood how to create unity without coercion. Lysara's gaze followed every move, analyzing, learning. She realized that the humans had a different kind of strength, one that relied not on intimidation or tradition, but on insight, patience, and adaptability. It was subtle, but infinitely powerful. As the negotiation concluded successfully, a wave of murmurs passed through the court. The humans had not only survived the tests, they had thrived. They had shown intelligence, adaptability, and leadership that rivaled even the most seasoned Tervani. Lysara stepped down from her platform, approaching Kane with measured steps. The court watched in silence, sensing that this moment was significant. "Commander Kane," she said, her voice softer now, carrying respect rather than mockery. "I've taught us much about your people. I see now that humanity is not to be underestimated. Have strength in ways we did not anticipate, and intelligence that is impressive." Kane inclined his head. "Thank you, Princess. Respect is earned through understanding, not assumptions. And humans have much to learn, just as we hope others will learn from us." The princess paused, a faint smile touching her lips. "Then perhaps we have much to gain from one another," she said. "Humans, you have proven yourselves clever, adaptable, and formidable. The galaxy has underestimated you for too long." Mara, standing beside Kane, felt a surge of pride. "You did it," she whispered. "You changed their minds. You changed everything." Kane allowed himself a small smile. "We did it together. Humans act as one when we must, but we also act wisely when we can." The court, once skeptical and mocking, now regarded the humans with admiration. Delegates approached cautiously, asking questions, seeking guidance, and even offering tentative alliances. Kane responded with patience, humility, and clarity. Each interaction reinforced a growing truth. Humans were not just survivors. They were innovators, problem solvers, and quiet leaders. Even Princess Lysara found herself reconsidering her assumptions. She had mocked the armor, assumed weakness, and expected failure. Instead, she had seen intelligence, courage, and subtle power. Humans were not flashy or arrogant, but they were effective. They did not seek attention. They commanded it through competence. Later in a private audience, Lysara spoke directly to Kane. "You have shown me that humans are capable of greatness in ways we did not expect," she said. "I admit I was wrong to mock you. I underestimated your strength, and I misjudged your people." Kane nodded. "It is easy to underestimate what we do not understand, but understanding, once achieved, can change everything." The princess looked at him thoughtfully. "I see now that humanity's strength is not in weapons or rituals, but in thought, adaptability, and courage. You do not boast, yet you inspire. You do not seek glory, yet you achieve it." Kane's calm demeanor did not waver. Humans act according to need and principle. We do not seek unnecessary attention, but we do act decisively when it matters. Lysara's expression softened. "Then perhaps humanity deserves more than curiosity and skepticism. Perhaps it deserves respect earned, not given lightly." As the humans departed the court, the atmosphere had shifted entirely. No longer were they outsiders to be mocked or dismissed. They were equals, worthy of consideration and collaboration. Across the galaxy, news of their success would spread, demonstrating that humans were clever, resilient, and quietly formidable. That evening, Kane walked through the palace gardens with Mara. The alien flora glowed softly under the stars, casting long shadows across the polished paths. Kane paused, looking at the serene landscape, reflecting on the day. "We have made an impression," Mara said, her voice filled with quiet pride. Kane nodded. "Yes, and more than that, we have shown that humans are capable of strength, intelligence, and resilience without arrogance. That is how we thrive, quietly, confidently, and always learning. Mara smiled. Do you think Princess Lysera truly understands now? Kane's gaze remained steady. She understands enough to respect us. That is the first step. Understanding fully will come with time, as she sees what humans are capable of when they face the challenges of the galaxy. Across the palace, Lysera looked out over the city, thoughtful. The humans had shown her a new perspective, one that combined intelligence, courage, and adaptability in ways that were rare among alien civilizations. She realized that the galaxy had changed in just a few short days, and humanity had changed her perception of what was possible. The stars above glimmered with distant light, endless and infinite. Kane felt a quiet satisfaction. Humanity had survived trials designed to humiliate and challenge them. They had succeeded not through arrogance or violence, but through intelligence, patience, and quiet determination. As the palace settled into the calm of night, Kane knew that this was only the beginning. Humans were newcomers, yes, but they were clever, adaptable, and capable of achieving greatness. And as the galaxy began to recognize their potential, one thing became clear: humanity had earned its place among the stars, and no one, not even a proud Tervani princess, could underestimate them again. And for Princess Lysera, the lesson was equally profound. The humans she had mocked were not just clever. They were quietly extraordinary. She would never forget the day the human commander removed his armor and walked with quiet confidence, showing strength without arrogance, intelligence without boastfulness, and courage without display. The galaxy was vast and filled with unknowns, but humanity had proven one unshakable truth. Underestimated or not, humans would rise. And when they did, they would do so with quiet, undeniable brilliance.